Hello and welcome to another Human Synergistics Roundtable session. My name is John Van Etten from Human Synergistics, and I'm happy to be hosting our fourth roundtable today, talking about the topic of social due diligence in organizations during mergers and acquisitions, and how Human Synergistics instruments and a diagnostic approach can be supportive for driving successful merger and acquisitions. So very, very happy to have this discussion today and lead the discussion. Firstly, I'll be joined by accredited practitioner, Mr. Christian Sellers of Transforming Engagements. Thank you, Christian, for taking part today. Special guest today from MMT in Poland, Maria Mycielska. Very experienced. I'll come back in just a moment, but we were just talking before the session, 15 years of experience using HS tools in Poland and across Europe. So wonderful working with you, Maria. I'd love to hear the insights today on merger and acquisitions. We'll be joined a little bit later on by two other accredited Human Synergistics accredited practitioners, Jochen Grottenhofer of Transition Consult and Peter Fenderfeen of Room to Act Consulting. So happy to have the meeting of the minds today about diagnostic approach to merger and acquisitions, the benefit of that kind of approach. And Maria, very happy to sort of turn things over to you. You've brought in a few of your cases from the past. Happily, we work a lot in the area of M&As and with you as well. So very happy to look at your experiences and start with those. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you show maybe my slides so we can
that probably would be helpful, wouldn't it?
All right. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I just want to show and to share with you some example of mergers and acquisition using organizational culture inventory. And I would just focus on the three different aspects of those mergers, and we can discuss because there are much more, of course, those aspects, but I think some of them are quite interesting. So let's go. First example, it will be about corporate culture and national culture. I have quite a lot of questions when I'm working with mergers, especially when you have cross-border mergers, that there is a difference because this is our national culture. We are different because this is our culture, yes? And that's why I was thinking that it's a good subject to talk about it. And I will show you one example of two companies from two different countries, one from Poland, one from Germany. And also there was this question, oh, maybe the difference comes from different culture. And then second example is about impact of top leaders on culture. It has like a dominant impact, but I want to show you with the mergers, like one company, different leadership, and the second different leadership, and what to do next. We can discuss. It's still something we can think of how to do it better. And the third example is about causal factors, so factors that cause the behaviors, the culture, and key success factors that I just listed from my examples from my clients and my experience as well. So I think, John, you can just for the beginning just explain the circumplex, because then I will show you quite a lot of circumplexes.
Yeah, love it. Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, let me interject and add to the stage Peter Fenderfeen, accredited practitioner from Human Synergistics. Thank you, Peter, for joining. Absolutely. All right. So now that we're a little more complete, yes. So the circumplex. Happy to follow up for anyone who's curious about the model. We actually teach dedicated sessions to these models, have a lot of support materials to explain them. But in any case, what we're looking at is something we describe as a circumplex. It's a model on which we plot human synergistics, various essentially patterns of behavior. And that's what we're really measuring within organizations in terms of culture, various aspects of behavior in terms of patterns and characteristics of those patterns. The two main characteristics of behavior that we're assessing are the extent to which the behavior is what it's described as satisfaction versus security oriented. So that's basically the top versus the bottom of the model. What we're talking about there is essentially behavior that's oriented, thinking of Maslow, toward growth, learning, development, social cohesion, collaboration, those kinds of higher order goals, versus security oriented behavior toward the bottom. In terms of the colors, that's both red and green. The second characteristic of these patterns is the extent to which they're task versus people oriented, and that really represents the left hand side versus the right hand side of the model. So anyway, this breaks down then into the colors that are sort of the main thing that are referred to when we talk about this in broad terms. Constructive, satisfaction-oriented patterns, which are collaborative and goal-oriented, again, focused on things like learning, development, cohesion, goal achievement, so on. And then we have more defensive behaviors, focusing more on, again, a security orientation, red being more task-focused, green being more interpersonal. Anyway, I'll leave it at that for today. If you're interested in more, please reach out. I hope that helps to guide the discussion forward. Thank you, Mary.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I will share with you quite a few profiles, so that's important that you understand, whoever is listening us, to understand how to read those profiles, but we will talk about it anyway. So what I have here is just a short versions, just a short titles around those styles. And it consists of 120 behaviors that we checked during OCI, Organizational Culture Inventory. And first, this is for Peter. I will show 3 different aspects of mergers and acquisitions. And this is the first one, which is 2 small companies after cross-border merger. Because I mentioned to you that one of those examples will show you some sort of one aspect, which is national culture. It's not only about merger; it's also about any culture that I get such a information. Here is different because of the culture of national culture, because we are like that, etc. So I was thinking that it might be interesting to see 2 different companies joining together. They are technological companies. And one was German, one was Polish. And here we have two different profiles. As you see, company X in Poland is more constructive. We have. I don't know if it's possible to show anything. My arrow is not possible to see, or it is. Yeah, okay, but you can see on the place which is like on the clock, yes, and this is the position of humanistic is position number 1 and number 2, and you see that one is humanistic, affiliative is number 2, yes, and you see with the German company that this is quite small, yes, very little extension. In Polish company is much more. Or more, let's say, and generally blue is more, but it's definitely much less defensive style. So this defensive, passive defensive green, yes, it's much smaller, much less avoidance, and in a German companies a lot of oppositional, which is this big number 7. Yes, big extension, red extension, so a lot of oppositional, quite a lot of perfectionistic. So as you see, 2 companies pretty different. Yes. So now let's see if you have any comments to that, then please comment. I'm just showing you, and look at the managers' positions in one company, in the second, more or less the same size. So this one is quite this company X, let's say, Polish one is quite constructive, yes, from manager point of view, and much less oppositional. Here is a lot of opposition in a German company. So there are quite different companies, yes, let's say.
Yes.
But they work together, and I had a feeling that there is some problems with working together after this merger, and it might be coming from this difference, cultural difference. Let's see next one, and you
Good
see
suspicion.
specialists. Unfortunately, there is some. It shows one on the others on my slides, but anyway, this is difference, yes, on the position of specialists, so people without direct reports. This one is quite much less defensive than the left one, yes, the right one. The left one is really quite green and a lot of opposition. On the lower level of employees, it was even more defensive. So obviously, there was a question about the culture, about the national culture, because it is quite normal, and the German part of leaders, they started to talk, and because maybe we have higher expectation from the culture because of national culture, that maybe on the Polish side people are happy with what they have, and in German we have higher expectations, so we are more critical. That was the idea. So that was quite interesting, because I was thinking that's it might be true. We have to just to check it. But let me show you first, before I show you some other information about it. This is about employee satisfaction. This is the Polish side, yes, the Polish company, the Polish part. And you have the satisfaction, and this is the satisfaction, this red one or violet. Yes. Then we have average. Yes, the blue one is the average for both companies, and the gray one is the historical average, some sort of benchmark, and the dark blue is, as I see, aspirational benchmark, because this is for constructive companies. Yes, and as you see, this red one, just to simplify, red one is really high. Yes, it's even above this constructive column. Yes, and this is about satisfaction, intention not to stay, and also recommend organization as a good place to work is even huge. Yes, so they are very happy, in fact, those people for Polish companies. So let's see for the German one. They are less happy, but still okay. Yes, still they're above the average, sometimes below, sometimes even here intention to stay is even higher than the constructive benchmark. Here is better than average, historical average. Here is on the same level, so it's pretty okay with such a defensive culture still. So let's come.
I like being passive defensive, maybe.
Yes.
Maybe they have a very closed office where they can,
exactly. Yes.
satisfied with themselves, huh?
Yes. I was thinking as well about it. Yes, what it is. But obviously, coming back to that cultural, I was thinking, I really don't know what are the differences, national differences between German and Poland, and I would have to check it, because maybe there is something like that they are more critical because they have more expectations. Maybe they have comparison to different companies, yes, and that's why they see the culture so defensive, but they are still okay with the satisfaction. So there is so I found some differences, and let me show you. This is Hofstede. You probably heard of, or whoever heard of, about national culture is Gerd Hofstede. It's very well known about research on national culture impact. Yes, so I found the research results, and this is from, he was doing it on 2001, so a long time ago. Yes, almost 24 years ago. And I took the difference between Poland and Germany in those 4 different dimensions that he uses. He used more later, but those 4 are those basic dimensions. First is power distance. Power distance is how you see your boss. Your boss is, because of position, because he's a boss, so he's important. Whatever he says, it's okay. Yes, I have to do it. It's less partnership and more like, big distance. And you see, in 2001, you had quite a different in between Poland and Germany. Germany was much more flat and more partnership. There was quite a high power distance in Poland. And I was thinking that it's normal because it was like not that far from the communist time, etc. So maybe it was like that. Yes, very likely. Then we have individualism, so less affiliative and more working individualistic. Not but big difference, okay. Uncertainty avoidance, that was quite a big difference. So uncertainty avoidance is a difference related to how much security I need. Yes. So I need really everything to be secure. I need to know what will happen. I need plan everything. I don't want any uncertainty. So it can impact obviously culture. So you see quite a big difference. It was much less uncertainty avoidance in Germany than in Poland that time. And masculinity, it is more like a macho culture, let's say. It was more or less similar. But so here you have differences. But then I checked because I was thinking 2001, it is long ago, it changed a lot. So I found done some research by different guys, not Hofstede, but on the same methodology in 2015. And look at the differences in 2015. The difference are very little. Yes, those differences are like power distance was so huge, but here you have almost the same. Yes, so it's changing. So those 15 years change a lot. And my general idea is that those cultures are not that much different, especially in corporate life. Maybe somewhere, yes, in different areas, but in corporate life, we are quite close to each other. In Europe, probably in the US, in Australia, in many countries, we are quite close. And recently, even I had the experience with my son working in Taiwan for Taiwanese company. And we realized together discussing it that the difference is not that big within the company. It is a different cultural outside, but inside the company, it's not that different. So I think this is kind of just a belief of people that those national difference are so much impacting culture in the organization. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think so. The other thing I always think about is people are very good at recognizing differences in other people and overlooking similarities, and so it's sort of something I think about when we look at ideal culture profiles from all over the world. Yes, those descriptions do differ depending on where people are from and what their values, societal values are, and all of that. And it's kind of fascinating as it is to dig into all those differences and think about where that comes from and so on. Really, when you look broad picture across, in 85-90% of the description is extremely similar in terms of what we need to move forward, what's going to help us do our best work, what's best performance here. And that's that's a cool. So I think people really we're sort of programmed to recognize differences first, and anyway, I think that's a lot of it as well. I agree with your point that for the most part, really globally in organizations, the broad norms are for the most part are shared, but differences are also, of course, fascinating.
Exactly. It's good that you mentioned about those ideal culture, because we have quite a lot of different ideal culture from different parts of the world, and they are quite similar. And I see it as well. I see in many companies when we have a lot of different people and we discuss from different countries and we discuss ideal culture, yes. So the desire profile of culture, and we have the same that then when they start to discuss, they agree quite easily that they want to have it constructive.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I switched my background. It's probably far too small,
Oh,
but at least in terms of color, you can see these are example
mhm.
ideal descriptions from our clients, and these are all over the world. So, and maybe this is a good perspective from that very zoomed out view. You can see that each is different, but again, for the most part,
Yes, but they are not that different as we
right.
think.
We're not that different, you and I.
Exactly. And I think also for some company or some people, leaders, this is a easy justification for differences.
It's
Yes,
important.
we are not
Yeah.
that constructive because we are culturally different. So it's easy
Right.
to just to
Right.
find some justification. Okay, that's national culture.
Yeah. And while that is true, that again accounts for a very small amount of
Yeah.
of difference really overall. So
Exactly, and especially when you have international people living, working from different countries, then it starts to be very similar. And many big corporations, they have really a lot of nationalities working for them. So that was my first aspect of mergers and acquisition. And now I can show you the second one, which is from different point of view. This is two companies, and they had, because the previous one was the organizational culture inventory was done after the merger, but here we have two companies before the merger. Yes, that's a question as well, when we should conduct it. Yes, but this is a different example. This is before. So we have, and here I would like to focus on the impact of top leaders on culture, because I think this will be very important, and we can discuss it because two companies are joining together with two different board members. Yes, and they might have different approach towards culture. So let's see what we have here. And we have two companies, similar size, and we have one which is more constructive, less defensive. The other one, X, is more defensive. Yes, you have more green, more power as well. You can see power here on the 8 o'clock.
Is it both? Is OCI?
This is OCI only. Yes.
The right hand side looks like a composite one, like where everything gets.
Yes, yes.
50%
but it's OCI. Yes, that everything is more or less the same size. Yes. Mm-hmm. But the left one is more on blue and red. The interesting thing is that the one on the right hand side, this company was already doing something with culture before the decision about joining together. So this picture is already after really work and towards the culture, constructive culture. So they did quite a lot, and this is something in the transition, let's say, maybe, because they are still doing something. Those on the left, X, this was new for them. They were convinced to really conduct the OCI by the other companies that had already some experience. And now we have, this is interesting. Look now, because we have managers, yes, company X and company Y below, and you have managers, middle managers, and specialists. Let's just put some arrows. Look here, because less differences are lower level, but the higher level, B-1, so just below board members. And what do we have here? Huge difference, yes. And the question is why, yes. That's, I think, that because those managers are thinking about culture, looking at board members. That's my idea is. And those as well, that this is a difference. There is some board here and here,
right,
and they probably make the culture looking like that for them, for B-1 managers.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's right. No, that's absolutely what we find. And when you go that high up in the organization, you certainly can tell where that's coming from. So, and the short answer, and we know this, is two things: leadership and organizational climate. So you're right. These patterns are in both cases. What's going on currently at those senior levels are based on things that are role modeled, encouraged by their lead the board themselves directly, followed by, of course, how those senior leaders' jobs are designed, what their goals are, what they're held accountable for.
Yes,
very
and I
different
think it's
approaches.
cascade down. Yes.
Yes, it's an unusual cascade. Usually, I actually have examples, but usually we see, well, anyway, it's fascinating how those cascades happen across organizations. But finding cultures that get increasingly aggressive toward higher hierarchical levels is not that uncommon. So it's definitely an example. The first case is a good example.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting case, and I think this is the major thing to resolve when they are joining together. It is about those top leaders, yes. Board members.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can see in this something we talk about, and that is, if you can measure these patterns and the differences of then culture, then you can begin to break down and see, really literally see what parts of these organizations are going to be able to work together effectively and which are not. And you can see very clearly from that, just radical difference in company X versus Y in the management level of how they currently approach their work, that, the current patterns playing out and how they do things are so disparate that's going to be a very difficult, cross collaboration for these organizations.
Yeah, and I think that also, just to share with you some background, that this company below, company Y, those people who are on the top here, and they see so much humanistic and achievement oriented, very, very blue, they were people who decided to work on culture like 2 years ago. So this is like a second yes. Good. And they very much believe, I know really, even that they very much believe that they have done a lot of good work on culture. Yes. So they see it also very constructively. But it's true, because here is also quite constructive, yes?
Yeah, and you can see it starting to cascade down through the organization, which is why, to your point earlier, those may be profiles sort of in transition, if you will. I mean, all of these profiles are a snapshot in time, but that's really nice to see how the next level is more constructive and so on.
Yeah, and here we have some top leaders who are very probably aggressive, and they perceive culture also aggressively, those people.
Sure.
But the problem might be when they join each other, yes, because this is before company merger. Right. Because it would be difficult to find like a common ground, yes, for them.
Yes, exactly.
Different.
Can I ask a question? Who's buying whom? So
sorry. Who's buying whom? The top company is buying the lower company.
And so now it gets interesting, because then you can ask the question of who's, in the negotiation process, who wins?
Yeah.
Who wins over the goals to be decided, the critical, and so on? Because you can also already guess, that we would like to see more of the company Y,
right?
Let's say executives taking the lead, but you can already guess with the profile of company X that the positions and the game of synergies, and I'm not talking about human synergistics now.
Right. No, I know what you mean.
Synergies within the structure, that the company X may take the lead in pushing through their interests in this kind of merger. That would be at least a risk to consider, right?
Yeah, and just to jump in briefly, from my side, that's really the biggest risk in merger and acquisitions, is that we we lose out on the strengths of one organization or the other because of those sorts of things. So this is why, one of my favorite best practices for this is to use this kind of diagnostic as early as we can in the process, so that we can see, what those differences are, and begin to coach and develop the organizations in a way that enables them to move together. And we're taking strengths of organizations, rather than company A sort of taking over company B or vice versa. I think it works best if we can identify things that are high performance and high functioning in each of the organizations,
Right.
and try to learn from that and build that in across, and that helps to pull the organizations together, both structurally as well as encourage the same kind of, hopefully more similar and more constructive behavior.
And this is the idea. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it reminds me, it's not exact, of course, it's all individual profiles, but when Amazon acquired Zappos, they try to, leave the company culture of Zappos standalone, because they knew that it had a highly constructive culture, and it should be, left alone to a certain extent in time.
Correct.
But the risk is that, when time passes by, still the leading company will try, to creep in with more aggressive ways.
Right. Over time,
it's always
yeah.
somehow, you can really see that happening, and maybe it's also okay from a overall only technical perspective, right? If you say, okay, maybe how things fit
it's
together,
still suboptimal, but
yeah, it will always end up in something that kills something of that, satisfaction oriented, positively.
Yeah,
hopefully not. That's well.
Yeah, it was a good example with Zappos and Amazon, because they started to, they wanted to keep this culture, but it could be good idea if you have very different companies, so they can keep like together and be part of like a subculture, but very, very like on the side. Yes, they don't have to cooperate too much with other part of the organization. And the problem here is that the organization are really have to work together very closely. Yes, they have to mix.
Yeah, that's the risk
I have
of
a
that.
thought. No, go ahead, John. Sorry.
Yes.
No, sorry, very briefly. That's the risk of the approach of, we're acquiring an organization. We recognize that it's, constructive or high performing, or however we're seeing that. And we recognize that we sort of want that hands-off approach, where we're not going to sort of, try to fix what's already working. But, even in that case, then you really aren't creating a shared culture. That's from my perspective, the challenge. Yes, we can sort of take that hands-off approach. To Peter's point, over time, yes, the effects of the broader organization will sort of seep in. But even if it's done right, it still isn't really particularly optimal, because we've got this new highly creative, high performing part of our organization that works in very different ways than we do, and you still never really benefit from integrating those organizations cohesively into the business. Christian, I think you've seen this in pharma. Certainly I have too, where you have those incomplete mergers that just sort of linger on within the organization, and you've got these different subcultures playing out in the business that are incompatible with one another. And I think that has its costs in that approach. Sorry.
There's actually there's a tendency in the pharmaceutical industry for people to convene under the banner of their old employer. And you have these, what they call lost civilization groups, where people will say, we used to work for Schering-Plough. We'll meet together because that was such a great company. And my gosh, working for Merck was a nightmare, or whatever. I mean, so that kind of tendency where people still remember the residual culture is there. I mean, the one thing that I was quite fascinated by, because if you do a sort of multiplayer version of this, if you did like a repeated game of just continuous mergers, like where do you leave? And my sense is if you've got a dynamic environment, you would hope that the constructive cultures ultimately would dominate, because they're the ones, we keep saying constructive cultures are so tied to good outcomes. And if that really is true, then over time we should see in every merger that if you have a merger like this where the aggressive culture dominates, the company's going to fail. When the environment changes, they won't be able to adapt. But a culture which is more, the company-wide culture here, if it dominates it, the company's more likely to survive. So you would hope from an evolutionary perspective, over generations of mergers, you're going to see more and more blue happening. That would be the hope.
Agreed.
And let's hope so.
Agreed. That is the hope. Yeah.
Okay.
I think if this is done consciously, if I can use that word, then that absolutely is a real potential. Absolutely.
And that will never happen, because the thing is that, and for good and human reasons, I think, because there are deeper belief systems in some of these aggressive areas that you can call it a lie, but they may believe that this is leading to more success, and it may also be. You can also maybe test it against KPIs that it's true in the short term and even in the midterm basis, especially when whole leadership teams and key executives have the same kind of belief. Then it can also push through. Whereas from an evolutionary perspective, they will die in the long run. That is clear. But as Maynard Keynes said, in the long run, we are all dead, right? So that is really, so I think we need to put or take into consideration that we always have to dance the dance. We will never end up in something that is completely transformed to constructive, whereas the evolutionary view on things would suggest it strongly, right? And would also, prove it right when we have endless time, right? When we assume time is not a thing to consider, right?
Sure. And other fixed variables as well. I mean, the context is always changing, when we're looking at behavior and culture, it's that's behavior is result in a large part of the current context and situation that we find ourselves in and our response to it based on our experiences and learnings over time. So, agree. And the other point you were starting to get into was, from my side perspective, is misattribution of success. And that's a very common challenge in culture. It's probably the most common difficulty in sort of bringing, anyway. And that's basically the combination of two things. It's working within an organization that's defensive, let's say that, in terms of its culture, yet also effective. When we think about our business, we would define it as being an effective organization. And in that context, then we tend to assume that what is currently happening in the business, the way we currently are doing things, is effective, right? And that connection is sort of that could be a misattribution of success, right? What's currently going on in the business may actually be holding us back, getting in the way of our success. But the fact that it's the way we do things, we start to lose context within those systems and start to, it's sort of weird being within in the culture itself, because you start to lose perspective of what is actually directly contributing to performance and what actually might be holding us back. And anyway, our assumptions about those things. So I think that's part of the benefit of these tools, but something we always deal with in organizations, because most leaders will say their organizations are successful, even if they're in a challenging, struggling position right now. It's a successful organization. And again, the assumption is we're successful because of what we are doing, not perhaps in spite of some of what we're doing.
I think that maybe there is a thinking here around that is true, and that helps us to bridge, these things, because I think what we can see and what we can say is that every defensive culture can improve when they are ready and open to move into the constructive direction. So it's not about, completely changing something from defensive to completely constructive, which would be, completely against every belief system maybe. But once they are open to, look at themselves more objectively and these patterns, and then gradually improve, then we see also a cultural shift happening that may not appear in the OCI, but it is it is that vibe that we need from an evolutionary perspective, where we say the core, the core valuable thing to do here is question your belief and try to do it differently. Once you do it, wow, there is something happening here. This is more is better. It may be still a defensive culture when we look at the profile, but there's something happening here on a day-to-day basis, maybe in the company, and that gradually also shifts the belief, let's say, setting, and then can also be proved. People can hold on to what they believe made them successful, and then can also learn that they can grow and become even more successful once they are open to shift, little things in, first of all, in their thinking styles, and then, turning out to become larger patterns in the cultural profile. So I think there, that this, and then this you can see if you do the retesting, you have to do the retesting for that in order to see it, and then you correlate it with real, financial KPIs.
Yeah.
Cool.
Then it's clear. Yeah.
I'm also thinking that this is a lot about just awareness, and the company X here, we are still not done with that, but this company is starting to think about it, because it is very new for them. So I suppose when they very much like also Peter said, that this is very much about awareness, about looking at yourself and your results, yes. And when they start to think about it, it's usually slowly change into this direction, into more constructive direction. And this is here which is from the book of a great company, but I think this is a very good picture, because we have two dimensions from desire, from current culture to desire, and from on the left to the right, from about belief and the commitment of leadership. And that's what I think it's really the most important. The first two, denial, non-response, non-compliance, this is really about, okay, there is some culture, but I don't care really. I have my numbers, my KPIs, etc. This works, that's good. Yes. Efficiency, this is the stage when we start to think about it. Please. Sometimes it is not measuring, but also asking HR, change our culture. Maybe it will be good. Maybe it will be more efficient, but do it for me. Yes, from top leaders. But then we have this strategic proactivity, which I always try to convince those leaders to really change their way of thinking, change their mindset. Yes, if they start to be really committed, they see that there is some benefits behind it. Like the companies that I just showed, the company X, yes, they have real benefits they have achieved through changing or shifting towards more constructive culture. They have real concrete business results, less turnover, and many other things. And really quite real, clear evidence. And this way of thinking, changing the way of thinking, this is the most important in a change of culture, of the change on the top level managers. The strategic proactivity to see the culture as a part of strategy and a part of future, and really thinking deeply that this is a part of business. Because this is, I see in some of the leaders that they just divide it into two areas: strategy, yes, KPIs, etc., and culture for HR. Just make people happy, yes, and go to HR. But it's not like that. So this is the most important things to to change really culture, to transform it. So let's see that.
HR, I have to say they're also, doing that kind of a transformation, where we have these business partner concepts where the business partners are really the business partners of the senior leaders in the companies. We see that shift, and that they work as a leadership team together. And only if they work together, I think you can also achieve, the sustaining or the strategic proactivity part in it, because they see, it's like a complementary kind of force that comes together as one. And we see that, but it needs maturity development in the HR sector, right? And first of all, then the leadership team needs to have, that awareness that this will, contribute to the overall cultural development, but also to the things, how we see leadership as a whole, because then the people orientation and the task orientation can really merge together as one, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Which could also have, a very important role if you have such an HR area or, team that if they operate in this way, they maybe support a merger much better than once we have two separate HR that come more from a compliance perspective and do climate investigations once a year and then develop action plans, and everybody's sticking to the process, right? So it's also, I think you can also look at HR as an early indicator what is possible after the merger.
Right, and the HR should be like the starter of all the process.
Yes.
I think this is a very important role of HR. If you have really fully aware HR, they could be someone who can be this kind of starter of the whole process, and also make people more aware of the if HR is on the high level, because that's important, that they are not just like an administrator. They are really on the strategic level, so they can be very, very helpful in this process.
I mean, the one thing that's going to, in a merger context, that's going to get in the way is the fact that your HR people are totally swamped with administrative things. I mean, the HR department in the course of a merger, they have no bandwidth for this stuff, even though the stuff is arguably as important as getting the payroll right. So, yeah.
That's true. But it's interesting because we can also think immediately about it. If they don't do anything, what can happen? Yes. If they don't work on culture, they just leave it as it is. And I have such an example. I didn't do much about it on the individual work, but I remember one bank who bought another bank. And they, after 3 years, they were still talking about other people. They are from this bank, yes? Being one organization for 3 years, they were still saying, because this person is from that bank, yes? And this one is from, we and they. It was all the time, like, we, they, yes? So I wonder what would happen if they just stop it and do nothing, yes? What do you think? What could be the consequences of just doing nothing in such a big difference of companies merging together?
Lao Tzu would say that's the solution to everything.
Do nothing.
If we don't do anything,
work it out.
people will come to the right solution at a certain point in time. That's the Taoistic, idea about
a certain point of time being the key phrase.
Let's do nothing.
Inspiring words, Peter.
I have to make some changes.
Well, I mean, I've seen clients who can, we build in demographic questions sometimes to culture projects, post merger, asking things like, were you with this company 5 years ago? If so, were you previously with, company A or company B? And I'm amazed at how, when you do that post merger and then split the data and the profiles, how you can get very different. You can immediately see those very different subcultures continuing to tick on in the organization. And I've seen it in cases where the merger was 15 plus years ago. And anyway, like I said before, I usually say that to clients, there are two things you don't want in your culture that are going to cost you and hold your people back. The first thing you don't want is defensive behavior, red and green. And the second thing you don't want are subcultures, radically different ways of doing work in the same organization. Keeps us from working together most effectively. So it really breaks down that ability to work, laterally, functionally across the organization, and will cost you every day that those differences in work patterns are playing out.
Yeah, right. So let's move now to the third. So we will talk more about causal factors and the key success factors as well. So we can add to my client list, because I just
love it.
Some client list of success factors. So I will share it with you, but let me show you first the example of big company, really big company, just acquiring very small one. They acquired the small one because the small one was serving some sector of the clients. Yes, they were selling the same stuff, but for the sector of clients that the big company didn't. Yes, they also was selling different things, but for different market. But this one was selling for specific market, but very small one. And this is our like process, yes, how it works. And we have this current culture, so current behavior or behavioral patterns, and we have results obviously because of that. But there are some reasons why people behave like that, let's say. Those are those causal factors, organizational factors, leaderships, and everything that cause people or make people behave in a particular way. Yes, obviously, it is, if we have desired culture, we would like them to behave close to desired culture. But let's talk now about those causal factors. I want to show you something. But before that, we have those two companies, but in a different way. I just took one. It is the new company, the company X. And this company was serving different market sector, yes, as I said, but small company. Here, I didn't take the whole company because the company was like 20 times bigger. So this is not really very much showing you. I took the one of those sales part because this company X was sales company, and this one, I took one of the sales part, which was comparable. Yes, they should work similarly, but on different market sectors. And you see the difference. This is very, very aggressive kind of sales unit. Yes. So some people are very, very passive or defensive, acting very safely, and the other are very, very aggressive, much more than this one. Both are not too much blue, to be honest. Yes. But anyway, there is some difference. And let me show you next one, what it is. Those causal factors, because this, let me maybe come back here. Those causal factors were for this company very important, and they wanted to make decisions what to change based on numbers, or hard numbers. We have to see. So we also I have conducted with them also organizational effectiveness inventory. So all the 31 factors were measured. First, 31 measure factors which are measured here, and culture, of course. So culture looks like that, but now let's look at those factors, those 31 factors. And all those factors, this is company X, yes, all the factors of 31 factors, there were different colors. So when we have red color, nothing is here, but when it's red color, it means that this is priority target to change because they are below of the average for the company, below the historical average. So this is something to change. The orange one is below average, but not that much. So this was the second to consider. And then we have green and yellow. Yellow is okay, more or less. And then we have green, which is above the benchmark, above the average. So everything was like calculated. There is no this level of constructive culture because it was too high, let's say. So we have only benchmark, which is historical average, and the first one and the second is a company average. Then the number which is related to company X, and significant or not significant. Statistically significant or not difference. So the red one is statistically significantly lower, but nothing is here. So the first company is more or less, most of them are green. So at least they are on the level of average, yes. But the second company is like that. There is a lot of red ones, yes. So it's not only below, but also statistically significantly below, let's say. Yes. So you don't need to look at numbers, but those colors are, because they are according to some rules, let's say, which we have agreed with the customer. And why I'm showing it, because this is very, like said, mathematical, statistical, but that was the approach that the company wanted to have. And when you see here, like respect for members, for example, yes, and here you have red, respect of members, and the other company just acquired has green, respect of members. So this is a very good sign that they should learn from each other. Yes, what does it mean? Yeah. What is the best practice? Yes, what the company X is doing, which is not doing the company Y. Yes, so that's make it pretty, like, if you have people who are very much number oriented and they want to have some evidence, yes, so it shows you exactly this is red, so this is very low, very bad, yes, so learn from the other company what they are doing right, yes, that the respect for members is so high, but not only this causal factors. And I think that was quite an interesting approach because of the expectation of the company. We did like that with all those factors, and they started to work. This was quite some time ago, and they started to work, and this company changed a lot, really. The second one, this with a lot of red stuff, they changed a lot. They made a lot of improvements, and they work together now very well. Much better, because I still have contact with them, and this is a huge positive difference for them.
And Maria, remind me, company Y was the acquiring company, wasn't it? This was the company doing the buying.
Yes, that was the big one. Yes, that was the big one. Yes, and that was much less constructive. And the small one, the acquired one, yes, they were afraid very much that they were be part of very different culture, or much more aggressive and much less. And you always can, I was thinking that you always can say, this is another justification from companies. Like first one was we are different because it's national culture. And this is another one. Yeah. This is, we are different because we serve such a market. We have different market. Yes? So we have to be like that. But respect for members, it doesn't matter. Yes, when you think, yes, that's the idea. Yes, okay, maybe you have to do something differently, but respect of members, what market has to do, what kind of market you serve to, yes, with respect for members.
Whenever you shift the ownership to the circumstances, that's defensive in itself, right? So
right.
The whole argument of it's this or it's that is kind of not addressing the point, I think. But what I would like to ask here is, what was the magic formula for company Y empathizing with company X? Because that's necessary in order to change the red areas. There is something like, there's an empathic element here that is necessary for that, and would be very interesting to hear how this was organized, because I think that's really cool. If we could, I don't know if you know, but it's really cool to understand, because that's kind of the magic that would do the magic, not only for this example, but for many, many more, right?
Yeah, you mean what make them convinced to do this?
Yeah, and it's not about convincing, it's about what opened their heart to do it, right? It's like when I would, do the same thing, maybe for some conflict zones in the world right now, you can operate from the company. Let's take a country here, I don't call any names, but if they are not empathizing with themselves and others, they may not be ready to learn, right, from someone else.
Exactly. Yes, I think that's come down to people. Yes, there was a very good person who was leading the project, and the person was so much convinced that it was a HR person, but on the level of board members.
Yes.
And the person convinced the other board members. So this is very much about leadership, on the top of that organization. That's why they decided to conduct this OCI and OEI, yes, because the person who was like a leader of this project was quite a strong person and very convinced. So she was able to convince also other board members, including CEO.
Wow.
Yes.
Cool.
So that's what it is really. So it comes always, it is about leaders, unfortunately. So if you don't have, then
comes back to that topic.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's good. That's a wonderful advocate. That's a good example and shows what one person can do when they.
Right. Yes. Unfortunately, this person has left this company, and I'm very sad about it, because that was really, really like an engine, to do something with the culture, with everything.
What happened after she left?
Oh, that wasn't long ago, but she left behind her like a successor, very good young person. So I'm very much hoping that she will continue. I don't know how much strength she will have to really impact the board members, because the previous one was a really strong person, also personality kind of, that she was able to do it. And she left very good successor, but younger person. So we will see. But the person is also very much convinced. So let's hope she will have enough strength to push it, let's say, the right direction.
There is another learning then here, because that may also interest maybe some of the coaches here in this call. I'm not sure. But if there would be a way of how to, transform or impact individuals that could play such a role in a bigger, larger executive context, that would if we could make that happen, then you could really use this kind of approach on the OCI and the causal factors and so on, and then see who's able to moderate the learning between, or not between, the learning from one mindset to the other, and how can we support leaders doing that from coaching or influential. It doesn't need to be coaching, but it's kind of from a supportive, maybe I use Edgar Schein's helping perspective.
But that there is also this company also went through individual diagnosis, leadership impact, and I think it is also very helpful, because it opens some people's mind how I personally impact culture, impact other people's behavior. So sometimes people are completely not aware They think that they are doing great things, and suddenly they get results. Yes, and this doesn't look like that. Maybe I am part of the problem. Yes.
You know, I look at this. I always have this. You know, when I visualize, let's say, such a situation, there is something here where somebody needs to have a really courage. Must be really courageous, because there must be something here that shocks the system in a certain way, and at the same time it has to touch them, right? And to open something up that may not be there for all sorts of reasons, right? So it's that's rare, right? That's pretty rare.
Yes.
I just wanted to add on to the points that Peter's raised. I mean, I think the board level leadership is critical. The other thing is, if you're going to learn from others in a merger, you have to make sure that there are others to learn from. And that's always a challenge, is if you have a dominant organization that fills all the position from their company side, then you don't have the critical mass needed to bring all of the constructive behaviors in. I mean, the one reflection, I've myself lived through a major merger between two organizations where I don't know how much it was by design or by chance, but where we ended up with a critical mass of very different people. And the effect was electrifying. It was so positive in that I think both sides learned from each other. It just became a much more interesting, fun place to work. So part of it is around the learning piece, the feedback, the data. A lot of it is just having the right mix of warm bodies who can kind of socialize and transfer knowledge, maybe even just organically over the course of the transition. But just, if you just treat this as a slash and burn exercise, you're never going to get that, no matter what the diagnostics say.
Right. Right. So we can this is the picture, where how it works. Yes, we have those two companies, different culture. We have one desired culture. That's what I think we should create always, with one desired culture. And I do it also with the board members of both companies, because I want them to agree, to discuss it and agree what they want. And when they agree, yes, we compare it with what they got, yes. And projects are on those causal factors, as you've seen a moment ago, yes. Here are those changes, the best practices from both sides. And finally, those are my success, completed by me, but those are from various sources, also from my customers. And there are also, they are applying to, we can apply it to mergers, because first it is clear vision, mission, value, goals, and direction for both companies for the new entity. That's what we need. Yes, they have to agree first what they want to achieve as a business. Yes, before we go into culture. Then top leaders' commitment. That's for sure from both sides, or for many other. Or if you have more companies, then there's more sides. But top leaders' commitment. If without this commitment, as we discussed, there is no way. So various ways. Sometimes you have someone to get this commitment. Sometimes you have someone within the company. Usually, like I see, it is like that. That is like a person who is helping in this, who has some strength to really push it and really believe in that. It usually is that. Then it is those workshops that on the workshops I noticed that people sometimes are, they are not really sure, they sometimes not really happy about it, but finally they start to believe. I can even share with you example with one also HR person who was very much committed to do it, but she wanted to convince the board members. So finally, I was supposed to work with board members. I had only 3 hours, so to work with board members, and she was supposed to support me, and I was supposed to tell somehow show what we will be doing, how to convince them that it is worth doing. And she was sick on that day, so I was by myself with these board members who were not very positive. And apparently, she told me later that apparently they were sending during the workshop, they were sending SMSs. What is it all about? You know, why I'm sitting here? What she's talking about? You know, I have more important things to do and things like that. So good, I didn't know about it. She told me afterwards. But at the end, they were really interested in that, and they said, "Let's do it." Yes. At the beginning, it was very hard. Yes, but sometimes you are able because people don't think about it too much. Yes, they hear culture, something, whatever, but they start to talk about it. When you show them something, they start to think about it. They are usually quite clever people, so when they see real reasons, yes, they realize that it might be something useful. So what we have here is top leaders' commitment. And also I would say that some facts are very, very important to show to board members. They want to see some facts, some numbers, some facts, some reasons, some real examples. Sometimes also what is helpful is to show someone who is well known, like I have some people who are well-known CEOs of companies, and they are fine with sharing their names. So I say this person XY, yes, did like that, yes, and that was the reasons, and what was the results, and this is also very much helping other people because they said, okay, yes, so if they did, maybe I should as well. It's also helpful. Executive alignment for desired culture and values. I think it's important I always ask board members, as I said before, or sometimes top leaders to sit and discuss it and take time, discuss it and agree what they really want. Because they start to convince each other. And I don't have to do anything. They just convince.
That's true.
There is Lao Tzu again.
Exactly.
Do nothing.
Yes, I'm just observing. We are trying.
But do it in a wise way, of course.
That's the trick.
And then they have to agree because this is their, yes, not mine. So and finally it's a beginning, diagnosis of the current culture, and that's what I say. It's facts. When you have facts, and when they just see and you are confronted with facts, and those facts are different than they thought. Yes, and sometimes they are completely, shocking, even, or really something quite unusual. They never thought about it. So then they start thinking. It start moving forward. So I think the diagnosis is very important to move forward the whole process. If you have some facts, clear facts, and that's why I like the circumplex, because it's very easy to understand. You see it and you know what it is. You don't have to explain too much. It's clear. Yes? So it's easy to communicate. Then we have those 2 points, which I think are very, very important, are enable personal insight and shift in mindset and role model of desired behavior by leaders. Yes. So I always say you have to, as a leadership team, you have to speak with one voice. You have to be trustworthy. Yes. You have to be credible, because otherwise it will not work. Yes. You have to show yourself that you really care about it. So that's why those 2 points are very, very important. And again, engage people through the process. So more people engage. Usually I think it's good to start on the top, but then you go down, yes, to people. Then you engage people, ask people in various ways. They make their own companies make their own ideas. They have their own ideas how to engage people. They make some contest or something, whatever. It's very, very many different things, but they have to engage people through the process.
I mean, we see a lot of efforts that use also a peer review of engagement scores across the whole company, where they define multiple perspective on where they would like to see or have an answer from the whole employee environment. And so that could also help, tremendously to drive the momentum, where you could then see, the more people it's also a causal factor, right? The more they are engaged, the more constructive behavior we see, the more, people will buy into a constructive profile at the very end of the day. So it's
employee involvement.
Yeah. But I also noted that there are some people in every companies, there are some number of people who are very much willing to join the process. They want to be leading some project, etc. So I always try to convince or really show the people who are deciding about it to really find such people within the company and ask them to join us. Yes, because they have good ideas, they are really interested in that. So don't do it by force, let's say. Don't ask someone if they are not interested. Yes, they will follow later. But take those who are already interested. They want to do something. Sometimes there are some informal leaders who has quite an impact on other people. So if we can identify such informal leaders who are already role modeling the culture that we would like to see, that's great. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sure. And then we have roadmap, long-term consistency. That's a very difficult thing. That's consistency. I don't know what about your experience, but I see that some companies are long-term consistent, but it takes 2 years or 3. Then the CEO is changing and everything is changing. So that's a very big problem. If you have suddenly change on the top leader place, and they are not consistent, and they are not continuing things like it should be, etc. Because it's a long process. I try to convince also everyone and explain them in every company that this is a really, really long process. It never finish.
Right. It's a journey, not a destination, and
exactly.
a lot of times organizations will say, well, but it's going to take us 4 or 5 years to really get where we want to be. And from my perspective, it's like, well, then let's start right now, but at least we know where we're going. And as long as we take steps consistently in the right direction, we're going to get where we want to go eventually, right? It's really only standing here with our hands in our pockets saying, gee, we should be doing something different, but we're not. That's standing still. As long as we're moving toward where we want to go. And that's another thing that came up before about HS tools. And in a way, it's less about measuring where you are and what's going on in the current culture, and more about giving the client clarity about where they are going. What they say they need from their people, what they want, so that we have clarity of direction. So it's not a destination; it's a direction of where we need to guide this organization forward, and what's gonna get us where we want to go. So.
But those continuation, consistency. It is. I have just an example of one company that started the measuring and everything. Started very well. Then they stopped because they changed. There was a change on the top leader.
Always a risk.
Yes. Yeah. Then it was stopped for like 3-4 years, and they came back after this 4 or 5 years, and they said, oh, let's check because we would like to really continue it. And we have done second OCI, and the second OCI after those 4 years, maybe it was much more defensive than it was before.
Oh boy. Yeah, there you go.
So not only they didn't do anything, but
right. Not only were they not taking steps forward, they were taking steps back in the meantime. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But from that point, they started really seriously. So that's important, that this consistency and communication. That's also in general, communication in all those processes is very important. What are your experience? Because I think if the company is big enough, that usually I want them to engage the communication department. Yes, if they don't have it, it's it's together we are thinking about it sometimes. But communication or PR manager or someone, it's very important to communicate it. Even visualize something, nice name of that. It makes people more like attached to that emotionally. So I think it is important. Do you have any experience about communication of the culture changes?
I can only agree. I mean, if you have a communication around that, symbols around that,
Right.
people identify more and more, right? It gets reinforced in a very constructive way. And so that's really positive, I think.
Yes, you said about reinforcing. The one company that I was working with, they had even, they had like in every, for example, this is just an example, they had a lot of communication of the posters and different visualization, etc. But also they had, in every conference room, they had such a card that, for example, whatever, some rules which are very constructive, yes, like listen to other or don't interrupt or something like that, yes. And they had such a card, and everyone during this conversation should lift card if they notice that someone, let's say, interrupt the other person. I think it was fun, but they very much wanted to make it constructive. So even this kind of playing a little bit, it was easier to give. It is a kind of feedback, but it's much easier just to lift some card than say, "Oh, please don't interrupt me." Yes, it's so that's much more safe. And
Well, if I can share,
yes,
sorry, Maria, I could share a fun example from one of my
please.
current clients. One of their values is to try and be the greatest of all time, so to be the GOAT. And every 6 months, because they're based in East Africa and goat is a big part of the diet, they have a party where they basically roast a goat and they eat it. So they go through this process of reinforcing, trying to be the goat by eating goats.
Okay, good. And we have,
Actually, when we are just talking about this, you could add another point here on 11, which means celebrating.
Yeah.
Because the thing is that, all these processes, they need energy, they need power, they need positivity, they need something that is not too strict. And I say that because for a long time, exactly that was my weak spot, I would say. I took it seriously, pushed it too hard on the rational side and so on. So when you see me doing jokes, I somehow think it makes the whole thing a little bit.
I think so. Yes.
We are more into flow experience here, right? And
because generally we are learning when we have some fun, yes. So it's important to make the whole process pleasant for people, yes, even funny. Yeah, great.
Absolutely. I was just debriefing a report with a client 3 days ago, and they remeasured with OCI. They've been doing a culture development, and they have really positive movement across their culture. All of their outcome criteria, engagement, satisfaction, and so on are scoring much more positively than they did before. And they called because they wanted to prepare for their leadership and debriefing the results, the new measurements. And they were focused on, here's our next steps moving forward. Here are the new things we should focus on. Here's what we should, build into and my main feedback was that, I think we need to step back and, really focus on reinforcing the positive things that we've done. I almost would think in that case, and that's what I love about remeasurement, is we get to really spend, I think, the majority of the debrief talking about what has worked, the progress we're seeing, how that's paying off for our people, the improvement in performance and well-being. That needs to be, who's responsible for this? What have we been doing that's working? That recognition and reinforcement is huge. And to begin to celebrate this, recognize our efforts are helping us get where we want to go. And anyway, that I always, that first round of development until we remeasure and see that this is working is always the riskiest. Once we have that remeasurement and we can see that this is paying off, then you've kind of got that snowball rolling downhill. But like you said, I think only really if we take time to recognize that good work, recognize what's working, and then build on it. If we run ahead too quickly with what's the next step, you're right. We don't, we lose that flow, we lose that enthusiasm and energy. It becomes just one more task. And anyway, we can lose momentum. So I think that's a really nice thing about the journey, is it gets more rewarding. Sorry.
Yeah. And Peter, I think that to be fair to Maria, she has kind of included it as point 11, because if you look at the photographs, you have sort of like before and after celebration. Maybe that's the point.
Yes, before and after.
You're right. There's one thing, John, I would like to say also here, which is the retesting profile. We are not talking about this a lot, but the circumplex has a very emotional impact in itself. When you show the success as the circumplex, it addresses multiple perspectives on something that was achieved, right? I think that's a pretty, advantage over, let's say, a score, for example, right? Where you have a clear score that may be, above average or even, outstanding. But if you look on the circumplex, and let's assume that all the efforts pay off, and it's mirrored back in that, it really is a feedback that is tremendous in its emotional impact.
Yes.
That's important.
Very much so. If I can add, because that another example that I had not long ago, the companies that had that put a lot of effort to change culture, to move into the constructive level, and really they got the results which are much better than it was, much more constructive than it was before. And I had a workshop with leaders. And this is something that people are so proud of when they see it. Yes. They really think, oh my God, we managed it, we did it. Yes, that's what the results. They were so happy about it and so proud as well about it, and they wanted to share it with the whole company. It builds also some kind of identity for them. Oh, we together, we did it. Yes, and this is the success of the company I shared on LinkedIn, so you can see that, because they shared it also on LinkedIn and in different social media.
Yes.
And I think this is what you said, that this is emotionally very, very positive and builds some kind of identity for the company itself.
And they may have overcome really certain stress elements, because there was a lot happened there. If a OCI on the top level of the company significantly changes, then something, on the micro level, something really significant has happened on the individual level, on the relational level, on the way of, you deal with conflict, on the way of how you face real problems, or and how you get over it. And so it's like, finally I see it,
It connects with what people feel. Yeah, exactly. And the other,
yes, John, continue.
No, I was just going to say, the whole discussion around the positive sort of, experience and maybe emotion that people have around, it really is. I think part of the reason that's true is because for a lot of our clients, especially people in leadership roles, I get the sense that, now we finally have clarity about what I can do. It sounds maybe strange, but I've said it before, leaders are focused so strongly on the KPIs, the deliverables that they're accountable for, that, that we're always trying to improve those KPIs, drive engagement, whatever it is. But those are things we can't directly affect as leaders in organizations. You can't make people trust you. You can't make people engaged, right? We need to understand what it is that I do that creates an environment and a relationship with my people, and role models the kind of goal-oriented, collaborative behavior we need from our people. And that's what I can do. And as I do that, I see the trust and the engagement and the satisfaction in my people building. And that is very exciting. And motivating for leaders.
It proves something that people may not believe. or not believe 100%. That they are working on the root cause of everything.
Right.
And
Right.
all the rest is kind of a symptomatic or a kind of approach how to, get nearer and nearer to the root cause. But people
Right.
don't get it right from the start, and you can also not, in my view, not expect it that they get it. But they more and more, build this trust. And if you have this done, so congratulations for the presentation here and all the work that's in there. Because if you have done that several times, it gives you the confidence that you can. And that's exactly what you said, right? It gives you the confidence that you can actually influence here.
Right. Yeah, and not only actually influence, but in a predictive way. You can say, look, this is the direction we want the business to go. This is what we need moving forward. Here's what I have to do. Here's what we need to leverage. Here's how we're going to do that. We do that and it happens. Like that's that's what it's about. But again, to do that, we need not only good practices and coaching and support, but we need a clear understanding of what's going on, where we're going. That diagnostic piece to give us the framework so that we know where we are and what that direction is.
And the point 10, credibility, authenticity, and consistency of messages. That's very important because we mentioned about trust, and the whole process is very much based on trust, on credibility. So I also repeat to every company that if you really want to change, you have to be credible. You have to be trustworthy. If you say something, do so, or say why you need to do it. Yes. It has to be, because if you, what I noticed that when you start talking about culture, it lifts people expectation. Suddenly people look at the culture and about behavior, at the behavior of other people in a different way. Before they didn't care, but suddenly they think, oh, my manager doing like that, and we are trying to build new culture. So what it is? Yes. Immediately they notice that something is inconsistent.
There's that inconsistency. It's like the gaps in leadership and values. It's and how frustrating that is for employees, right? We say we're all about inclusion and communication and creative ideas and all that good stuff, but that's not what my leader or manager is doing. That's not what we do here. And I really, I honestly believe, in a way, it's almost worse to communicate those quote unquote values and then obviously not live and fulfill them, right? That is almost worse than just not espousing those values in the first place, right? Then don't say we're about that, because there's something very disingenuous about saying, here's what we're all about, and this is what's important, and then not following through and not doing it. I hate to say it, but I say the same thing about using diagnostic tools for development. If organizations are going to use these tools, HS tools, to measure culture, leadership, or whatever it is, then you need to be ready to do something with that information. If we're going to ask people about, culture and satisfaction, then we need to do something with that. I think one of the big problems with, surveys and global employee surveys and all of this is we ask our people for all this feedback, but we don't act on it. And it's that sort of sense of learned helplessness that they may espouse these values and ask us about all engagement and trust and so on, but nothing ever really changes anyway. And that, it sends another sort of negative reinforcing message to organizations. So if you're going to, use this and get good information, then, we should be using it and acting on it. Anyway,
if we think this through completely, then we have to, I think we need to also be humble a little bit here.
Right.
Because if you think this through, it ends in the individual, and the root cause of what somebody is, demonstrating in behavior is in the thinking styles and underneath.
Right.
And so it would really mean that we somehow, must go in the direction of self-management and self-leadership with every person somehow included in this work, right? So I'm not saying that we are not better than others here. Okay, but it's something like when we think this through, the root cause is then in every individual, and if they are open enough to accept that, I mean, that would make the world really a better place, one organization at a time.
That's it. There you go. Yeah, well, and that's why with culture development, we need to send that message. We were talking about communication. Ideally, we need to send that message to all of our people. It is a change of mindset that we need to get across around what's expected of our people in this business, how you should do your work and work with other people, what that expectation is. And it's not that we haven't been doing it before. Every organization has a culture. You've already been sending that message to your people about what's expected. There's a pattern going on. I think a big benefit of measuring and using this kind of approach is that now we can take control of it, because in a lot of interesting ways, leaders are not in control of the culture of their organization. And this gives us the ability to understand what it actually is, where it's actually coming from, and gives leaders, the kind of the reins to actually guide the culture forward, rather than what happens in most organizations, which is sort of, leaders are ultimately being led by the culture, and you've got that side of that sort of repeating cycle playing out.
I'm also thinking that when we discuss it with companies, especially at the beginning, it's a good way to I don't know if it's the right way, demystify it, or make it not as mysterious, let's say, because culture sounds like, oh, this is something mysterious, yes? And I try to explain them that it's nothing special. It is just people behavior, because they have some mindsets and they behave in particular way. But we can create conditions that make them behave more likely in the ways that we want. Yes, and this is all
and
about.
They want.
Yes. Exactly. We just want to create conditions that make them much more likely to behave in a constructive way. Yes, and we know what to do.
Enable that. Yeah.
Just do it.
Exactly.
Just a joke again. But I think that Dan Millman, with this, the way of the peaceful warrior, it brought it exactly to the point. You have to throw the garbage out of your head. That's what it is. It's just that, at the end of the day, you have to throw the garbage out of your head on the individual. And then, you have to see where we have garbage on a cultural level, and then make lean management with it.
Right. Right.
And lean management is not done by avoiding mistakes. It's actually identifying the garbage and then doing small, continuously improving steps to get a little bit better every day.
There you go. And that's what this is all about. Exactly. Yeah.
So let me share one example about those garbage things, that also about credibility and authenticity, because I think this is a great example of the person who was, after individual diagnosis, and he realized in this individual diagnosis that he is very, very aggressive. So his impact on culture is very aggressive. And this person had a really open mind, and he showed his circumflex, the results, very red, very aggressive, to all the people around, to all the leaders on big meeting, and said, this is me, but I'm going to change. Yes, this is about authenticity as well, and commitment. So don't bother, tell me if I'm doing something wrong against what we just agreed, yes, but I'm going to change. And I think he got a lot of credibility on that.
That is funny, because Marco Gardola of the Strawman Group, he put his LSI, I think it was the LSI, yes, he put it in the company report, and that was publicly offered, and he also had a pretty red profile, right? But that was incredible, he just offered it like, as a normal page in the company financial statement report.
But I hope it wasn't like an example for everyone else.
No, he made it the same way as you described, right? He said, I'm working on it, right?
Good.
Oh, yes,
very good.
I think it's very much about
I love that.
and authenticity.
Yeah.
Yeah, leaders sharing their profiles is the best practice for culture development. That's
and here's the profile is shared with the whole world.
I love it. There you go.
That's very a lot of courage.
Yeah, love it.
Good. That's all from my side, from my 3 examples. Any
Fantastic.
comments you may share?
Please, Peter, Christian, jump in. I'll hold back for a moment. Great stuff.
Maybe you would like to add something to those 10 points.
I mean, the one thing Peter, go ahead, sir.
No, go first, please. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing, maybe it's a role modeling point, but this point about bottom-up accountability, and I think, John, you emphasized this as well, is so important. And it's sort of the safe to speak up culture, feeling totally confident, calling leaders when they are inconsistent, and maybe teaching people to do it in a respectful way, but also teaching leaders to hear these words without losing their minds. I mean, I think that's part of it. You know, we're so hierarchical and we have so much of ourselves and our egos tied up in the perfection that's supposed to come with a big title. And when people are called to account because they do things that are reflexive, that are not consistent with where you've said, and you've got a very junior person or someone just insightful, instead of complaining at the water cooler, actually calling it out in a meeting or holding up their paddle when someone disobeys a rule, even if they're very senior, you know, that I think is radically powerful. And I think also is very empowering for everyone in the organization. But it takes a particular type of senior leader, a particular type of CEO to give people that courage. But that, for me, certainly in my own experience of leadership and what I've observed in other organizations, getting junior people to call on inappropriate behavior of senior people, I think is absolutely so powerful. Yeah.
Very much so. I think you just touched very important point, and I think in all the companies that I was working with, and when they really moved towards constructive culture, there was something about openness to feedback. There was always something about openness to feedback. Yes, they were learning it. They were communicating it. It is also about openness, internal openness to really accept feedback, and also courage to stay and to share feedback with other people. This is very, very important.
What I learned, and I still find this one of the key insights for everything that I'm doing, is that the way of how Marshall Goldsmith was advocating the feed forward instead of the feedback, and then, you know, including the impact of something in that feed forward, has a tremendous constructive potential to exactly do what you are just describing. It is like you can always speak up in a very respectful way, but once you indicate something people should change in the future, and then tell them the impact that you see with this, you always make a present, or you always make a gift, even to higher level managers, because it will also help them to continuously improve the role that they have in the way of how they impact their colleagues and culture, right? And I think that everywhere where I do it, it's one of the core thing I would like to have in the company culture, that they agree to accept a feed forward when the impact is also part of that feed forward. So when there is a clear statement of what needs to change and what that would cause as a positive impact for the company, for the relationships, or maybe for the person themselves, right? Maybe that it would open up some, resources within them. Maybe it would shift the quality of relationships. Maybe it's also a shift in performance, because they, as you mentioned, the thing of delegating more, so that people can, thrive in their own way, and roles more often, instead of being, limited to a certain vice guru kind of guy who knows everything. So there is, I think this is a key thing that can change a whole, it can help you transform a culture only by implementing this idea.
Right.
Peter, do you want to define that? I mean, feed forward. Feed forward. Do you want to define what that means?
Yes, it is not something where you consider the past, like, I want to give you a feedback how the last 30 minutes went, but it's more like, Christian, the way of how I perceived you during the last 30 minutes, here's something I think you should continue doing, because that added a lot of tremendous value for us here as a group, but also for maybe the people who listen to us, right? That would be a feed forward. So I just, take
Facilitating.
Right, it facilitates into the future, but it makes also clear what the positive impact is. And it can also, like, when we go on the senior management level, we will more talk about stopping things, because they have a lot of strengths. They are brilliant people, but they have the tendency to overdo it. So we will more or less end in something like, maybe you should stop telling and more asking open questions, for example, because that would have the following positive impact for yourself. You learn more about your employees, you learn more about your organization and how they perceive things, which you might lose that opportunity if you just go into telling mode. But it's also good for the relations, I think, because I saw you in this meeting, and people were kind of, limited or frustrated even. You may not have, or have you witnessed that, or do you see my point, right? So you are really trying to navigate into a constructive future here based on a clear observation from the past. So that bridges, but you never mention, like, this is what you did there and it was bad.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny
So
you mentioned that.
It's kind of like a prescriptive, restrictive thing. You're kind of getting them to pull forward. Yeah.
It's shifting completely to prescriptive mode instead of restrictive, because restrictive has the risk that the feedback is perceived as criticism, punishment,
Exactly.
and
it's a very much safer way of giving information, which is feed forward. I think this is much better invention in general, because whenever you talk about this typical feedback, you touch the person ego. Yes, when you talk about the future, what you think it could be better, in the future, it doesn't touch the person's ego. So it's much safer to say it.
Because it's about their potential that they can self-actualize.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, we have companies that are, claiming or espousing that they are, there because they, create a potential for all people's lives and everything. But, this is kind of an espoused value. If you have that espoused value, you need to communicate in this way, because otherwise you cannot live up to it, right? So I think that once this is part of, the communication, which you mentioned on your list also, then it has a tremendous power, and it trains people in everything, because once they need to shift their behavior, and you can also focus on it. Let's say you say, how can I become a better father? And then you get a lot of stuff from your kids, and they say, okay guys, too much here. Maybe I take one thing, like listening, and then you can say, hey kids, can you give me a feed forward in 3 months to come only on that topic? And then, you don't need any 360-degree feedback things anymore, but just ask your stakeholders, what they give you on an item that you found valuable to do for yourself.
Yeah.
Got it. Very clear.
Yeah, it's a whole I was doing a thing recently on the LWS reports and coaching with them. And that's really kind of the broad approach for the whole debrief, really. You know, it's not about the report being feedback in the sense of here's what you do and here's, you know, the consequences. It really should be more a feed forward in terms of if you were to do this kind of thing in the future, what effect would that have? You know, now we know what the status quo is. But if we tried this, if we tried that, what would the and that not only helps them think about consequences, but it gives them that cause and effect. You know, if I were to do this, what would the likely outcome of that be? If I continue what I'm doing right now, what's the likely outcome of that? You know, that kind of feed forward approach in coaching and debriefing really across the report is far more helpful. And and really in a lot of ways for the same reason you're saying, if we're talking about the report as feedback, people start to take it as an assessment of whether I'm a good or a bad leader, but you know, that kind of thing. And rather if we think of it as a snapshot in time and moving forward, you know, in an informed way, what can we do that would lead to what we want more frequently, more consistent? Anyway, that's that feed forward approach. I think very, very helpful.
Got it. Very clear.
And companies now also regarding this feed forward, that companies are also deciding not to do those typical assessment like every year. Yes, they change it into developmental conversations, maybe not once a year, but many times a year. But this is exactly feed forward. It is a part of developmental conversation instead of assessment.
Yeah, but they should not forget, for the reasons that we discussed some minutes earlier, that you should nevertheless retest from time to time, because that will then have a double, triple kind of positive effect, because it will always say, yes, you know, all these hypotheses that we made on the impact, they show up as actual results.
Right.
That's then the proof of concept, and everybody feels kind of, you know, it's just, you know, a stage. It's necessary to, when you have a certain stage in mind that you want to develop the company to, that you need to make this, you know, success transparent.
How many years do you think it's the best moment after the first diagnosis to conduct the second, the retest in your practice? Because it was more or less 3 years, but I don't know. What about you?
Yes, I don't like this timing discussion so much. I see where you're coming from. That I think timing is important, that you don't forget it, you know. But the thing is, it's more about the impact. So when is the timing right that we create the highest constructive impact for the whole organization? That is, I think it's an HR, you know, kind of strategic view on when to best retest in order to help, as you wrote it in the list here, to build the momentum.
Yes, we usually end up around 3 years. That's what I noticed from practice, that it's somehow you can really quite clearly, even for big companies, because I'm thinking about companies like a few thousand people, it is visible. If they really do it consistently, if they are really committed, after 3 years, you can see quite a big difference, really significant difference that you can communicate later to the organization. And in fact, all the companies that did retest, they were, except this one that just that I mentioned before, that they didn't do anything for 4 years. And it was even worse, but they knew that they didn't do anything and it will be worse. But for all other companies, it was a success, bigger or smaller, but always into the direction of constructive reviews.
Yeah, I'm very happy to hear that. You know, again, I think the models give us the ability to guide the culture forward rather than being, you know, caught up in the flow and led by it. So that's, I think, part of the reason we see such a great success rate in clients with these
From
approaches.
a merger perspective, I would say that it may be earlier because you want to see if things are going in the right direction, maybe. But I'm not so sure if that's true. But I could guess that that we have a more limited timeline here in the first years of a merger. But also that depends on the type of merger, right? What you try to accomplish strategically.
But pretty early, I would say the same, that it should be pretty early, because if those behaviors and those systems and everything starts to be really, established, then it will be difficult to move it. Yes.
Right. Yeah. You definitely want to know if things aren't progressing the way that they're supposed to be sooner than later. And by the way, update for HS accredited practitioners, OCI and OEI now at the organizational level, we have the ability to pulse measure with those. So, typically traditionally we would, use the complete instrument at the initial measurement, and then again, as you're talking about 2 to 3 years later, that kind of thing. But now we can take subsets of the instruments. So, if the client's working on just a few styles in the culture and a few climate factors and so on, then we can just pull those sections and pulse with that, something like quarterly, for example, or twice a year. And then we can, keep a track on that data to see without administering, the full measurement again. So anyway, that's something that several of our clients have really appreciated.
That's very powerful.
Yeah, it's helpful because, of all the system we're measuring at the time when the client is implementing change, they're usually focusing on, obviously, a small subset of that overall. So they're going to want to see that, 2-3 months, people are, the needle is moving. People are recognizing change. We are doing these things differently. In fact, others are noticing it, starting to respond to it, through the model. So anyway, and it's really cool from a data perspective because you'll see the climate factors being changed first. Nothing else will change unless we do things differently in climate. So you see the leaders starting to behave more constructively, and you see things like goals getting clearer and so on. And it takes about 3 months, and then after that, people really start to respond differently in terms of the message they're getting about what's expected of them. As my leader, I've been seeing is more creative and goal oriented and so on in the last 2 months. And as goals have become clearer and more consistently communicated, right, then I'm getting the message and able to respond in more constructive, achievement oriented ways. I know what I'm working toward. I know how I can apply myself. And anyway, then you'll see it showing up in the culture a few months later. And then ultimately, a few months after that, you'll see it start to show up in outcomes. Now that we're actually working in these more goal-oriented ways, but now I'm feeling more challenged, more engaged, more excited by my work. Anyway, it's kind of fun to see the dominoes falling as the system changes, but it's good stuff.
Your clients also get to experience HS without answering 260 questions. It's amazing.
Yes. They have to go through the initiation first, though. I'm afraid. But then after that, yes, that is true.
I think the topics we are discussing, they have a very wide meaning, because I thought maybe it's too theoretical, but I see 2 things that I came across in the past where I think the discussion that we're just having over the couple of hours that we had, or first is buy-side advice. When I was in KPMG, we had a team. They did operational due diligence in a phase where we saw that the company, there was a lot of movement on the transaction market, and it was rather a thin market on targets, right? And so they were asking, how much can we pay in order to get the target, right? So they tried to identify hidden potentials within the operational system of the target in order to pay more. When I was always a fan, but people thought this guy is crazy, because I thought, the biggest potential you can buy, and that is completely hidden, is how constructive the leadership can deal with challenges and with changes.
Right.
If we can see this in the profile, that you can really, and if you are an innovation leader and you need that type of culture, then the value that can come with it can be tremendous, right?
100%.
So what is the upselling here that you can
the upside of this,
right? The upside potential now in real dollars or euros or whatever, can we really quantify it? I stopped at that time and still I've then thought about it. It's interesting, right?
Merger and acquisitions are some of the things I'm most interested in. Firstly, because the tools work so perfectly in that context. But secondly, because it's the place I see organizations wasting unbelievable amounts of time and effort and resources and money. If you look at the percentage of merger and acquisitions that technically fail, and it's huge. And you look at, well, why do they fail? The answer is culture. This has been known. So, and you look at how mergers happen. And when I look at the data, the most common thing I see, I hate to say it, is a lose-lose. By incorporating this other organization, it has negative systemic effects, I'll put it that way, for both organizations. Anyway, and that's a real failure. In a best case, in reality, what I find in organizations is it's a win-lose. One organization absorbs the other. There is value taken from that exchange, but it's a loss essentially on the other side. Or, if you think of it the other way, the unique strengths and benefits that organization had are lost in the fact that it's been, consumed by the broader organization. One wins and the other loses. Now, what frustrates me is it really doesn't have to be that way. If we are smart and we look at what we can find strengths of both organizations and use those to build a merged business that's better than either of the businesses were beforehand, both in terms of performance and in terms of employee experience. And that is only possible, I think, with these kinds of, structures and data-driven approaches. And boy, would I love to see more organizations wasting less of their people's energy. And anyway, it boggles my mind that it goes on when it's actually completely unnecessary. And if we could synergistically pull the strengths of both organizations and build and grow something greater, that should be the goal of a merger. But most organizations just see don't look at it. Anyway, it's mind-boggling when you look at it that way.
The second one is, and it might be even much more relevant, and maybe leaders that are listening, they may say, yes. When we were in the conference in San Francisco at the HS conference, then Shine was advocating a book like Lead and Disrupt. And there was this idea of the ambidextrous leadership style that becomes more and more the new rationale for leadership. When we look at this, ambidextrous leadership style means I can handle completely different kind of cultures at the same time, right? And in this book is really brilliant. I don't know the authors anymore, but it gets really clear that there's a very thin line how to do it, right? And that you need to be able to hold different things in your head at the same time in order to handle it. What we are discussing here is like, maybe Christian, is also this continuous merger stuff. It is that idea of we continuously have different kind of entities in our organization that need to be, let's say, more innovative, more, autonomous, more that, and so on. At the same time, we have our areas where we see we have our cash cows. We have we have to go deep into the market, and they develop a whole different set of culture, and that's completely okay, because they should even, right? And now how can I handle that if I am, let's say, the leader who has to handle both of them? And then you have a kind of
there's a whole lot of
but this is, I see this.
So there's a
reality.
Yeah, I mean, there's a guy called Alexander Osterwald from Strategizer. I don't know if you've come across him. He's written a lot of stuff about organizations that need to be able to exploit and explore at the same time.
There you go.
Exactly that.
Yeah, that's
and what are the systems and processes? And his is more kind of, how do you bring structure to chaos? But the foundation that's built on is it's built on constructive leadership. Because the thing that's critical, and the reason why this whole entrepreneurship kind of thing, that the idea that within countries, in companies, you can be as entrepreneurial as a startup could be. The reason it always fails, or it fails often, is because the ability of people to tolerate failure is so low in corporations. If you assign someone to a skunk works, or you assign someone to an explore kind of unit in an organization, they're going to spend 2 or 3 years of their prime career doing something that has a 1 in 20 chance of leading to nothing, failing completely. And you have to convince those people that careers will not be compromised, because the company will see the portfolio value of that. So that takes a level of discipline and a level of leadership that I think constructive styles really, really helps with. But for most people, I don't think it's credible. Like, most people don't trust that their organization can give them this very risky mandate and still reward them when the inevitable failure happens. So it's interesting, your point of you've got to try and hold these two cultures in your head at the same time. I think what underpins all of this is trust. It's just trust, because otherwise everyone wants to go into exploit, because you get the big sales, low risk. You can grow it just by whipping your sales team a bit more, big country, big geography, big salary, big bonus. Why would I do that? Why wouldn't I want to do that instead of going to create a new product line that's probably going to fail? So it's how do you do this from a leadership level?
Right. But this is, this is an interesting question. How do you do it? Because that's exactly the question, right?
Well, those are the two dimensions, right? You're talking about security orientation versus satisfaction orientation, right? And also on the ambidextrous side, I mean, the whole finding resources and exploiting resources. It's interesting as I look at that, the more and more in organizations, the ambidextrous aligns essentially with task versus interpersonal. And you said it before as well, here's the goal, the task, the purpose, what we're trying to achieve. In order for us to encourage all of our people to move in that direction, we have to have that interpersonal approach where we let them know that we value them. And even though if they spend their time on the 5%, they're still taking, right? It's not a security situation where you're a threat if that's where you land. So it's that interpersonal, creating the security so that we can build the collaboration and excellence and so on. And that's, that goes back to what you see in leader profiles quite a bit. I've got the task orientation. I can, I can make the decisions and move things forward and, all that, but I have a hard time bringing my team along and empowering them to contribute and so that's in my mind, that ends up being the ambidextrous perspective in our models.
I mean, in this explore area, you see also kind of really structures where they separate entities clearly from everything else, even to relocate somewhere else in order not to be affected by the exploit culture. And
exactly,
the way of, and the level of psychological safety that is needed for people to doing that, if they are not coming from their personality, and like a lot of excitement, I would say, and a lot of risk, then the constructive approach to psychological safety, it becomes a whole different game, because what you actually need is clarity if that works or not. You cannot just not create autonomy, empowering, and then let the people do their stuff in those entities, right? Because if you shut them down and said, no, it didn't work, it will create tremendous dysfunctional impact in the future, because nobody will do it again. So,
there you go. And that's why they're not doing it now. Exactly right. It's so funny.
It is really like you need to be on the leadership side as well as on the employee side everybody needs to be 100% constructive and to also deal with task orientation as much as fatigue orientation. It's
the balance.
It's really hardcore. Really, I think it's the reality in bigger organizations anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
So respect to all the leaders out there, right? Because they have some of them do it, right? In a certain way.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a role that requires ambidexterity, absolutely, when done right. Yeah.
I think the other thing for me, and again, this relates back to Maria, some of the points you made about kind of integrating, making sure you preserve the right people and the right kind of skills in the course of a merger. The thing that I think is critical with this is long-term relationships as well. Really close, warm, trusting relationships. And, for me, if I think of my career, the bits that have been most fulfilling, it's been when I've been in dire straits or I've been in a situation where we've worked really hard, we've done very complex stuff, and there's still intolerable ambiguity. You don't know how it's going to land, and the consequences are real. We're going to lose a third of the business. Loads of people will lose their jobs. This will fundamentally change our business up or down. When you walk through that fire with a few people, then you trust them inherently. And I guess that the challenge is with the kind of turnover you have and the kind of dynamism you have in people, it's like, how do you build that trust? How do you accelerate that feeling? Because if I think of the team of people that I did this best with, I really think if I was given that team again, I could do anything. You give me a very unclear, vague, but important, risky thing, you can do it. So the question then is, how do you begin to make that relationship forming faster and more efficient? Because naturally it takes years and years. That's something that I think you want to try and inculcate as well.
Yeah, so I think what you said about trust, that's all, the most important part, is the most important factor, really build trust. When you are changing culture or where you are doing anything to get success, you need trust. And this is very difficult. And especially I was thinking, how you can build because trust needs like a physical presence of people. It's very difficult to build trust over, computer. So what about companies with the remote work only? They have only remote people. So how they can build trust and how they can really create culture that would be constructive culture. That's something that I'm thinking about, because there are more and more such companies that they have most of the people, or almost all of them, they work remotely. Yes. There is I read somewhere that trust, it is like a I don't know how to say, like equation. The trust is equation is like on the top is credibility, yes, proximity, and something more I don't remember, and below is egocentrism. So, less egocentrism is more trust, and more credibility and proximity, also
accessible,
accessible, so that is more trust.
I'm not sure if you heard about this, another crazy idea, but it's maybe not so crazy. There's a huge movement on the positive intelligence led by Shirzad Chamine these days, and what they are doing is, they try with physical sensation and awareness in the here and now to activate parts of the brain that are not accessible to our defensive thinking. So we also know that if you go into a certain posture in yoga, you do a certain qigong or whatever, in this state, you cannot be aggressive. You can also not be, passive, defensive. So you do not collapse in your body. It's just the right balance point that you do in and when you allow yourself, like he's rubbing, 2 fingertips and then sensing the ripples, and really deep go into it, you see that something shifts in the brain. And he calls that the wiser elder self that you then can access. There is something here that when you go into that state, or when you have become at a stage, you are only constructive, because that wiser elder self is nothing else but, using all the strengths that are in the constructive areas. And that can be done within seconds. And this is kind of, for that topic, quite, that is for me a game changer that comes from this coaching, let's say, side of things. And they really developed also tremendous, digital program around it. It's incredible. But here the answer is yes, there's something coming on here that will surprise us, that it doesn't take years, it takes seconds. The problem is, and that come from Ken Wilber more than from them, is like you're just in the state of that, right? You're not at the stage, you are not that animal, you are not that constructive animal yet, but you get a glimpse of what that could feel like, look like, and what the Sharma, like, what's possible in the future, what's emerging from that. And I think that we will see a lot of pace coming from that. I sense that this is for the first time a movement that has the potential to significantly bring the timing of changes and transformation down from years to seconds, right?
Do you think the corporate world is ready for this?
That's a question. Yes.
No, not yet. But for me, that's not the relevant question. It's for me from an innovative perspective, right? So there is something emerging here that is really also buying into what we are discussing, and whether it's ready or not depends on the numbers of people who work with it, who make the experience, and who shift really, the impact they have on senior leadership. If that is possible, then they will become ready, because everybody who's not doing it will have a strategic disadvantage.
I'm thinking that the human synergistics motto, changing the world one organization at a time, this is about it. And I think we are like contributing a little bit to changing the world in the direction that you just said, Peter.
That's correct. And it's also the mindset of these guys. So I think that there are now more people next to all the madness that goes on in the world. There's a huge movement coming on that supports exactly, going into the constructive area without taking the human tendency of, and of course we need to also have security orientation, that it will always be there. Some, it takes that realistically into consideration, and I think that's somehow a good message, right? It's a good message.
Yeah, but what you're saying also sort of reminds me of something we've always noticed over the years with like LSI or LWS when we're coaching using that tool. We're measuring really two main things in those instruments: psychological patterns of the focal participant, sort of how they're thinking, behavioral patterns of those individuals, and anyway, how that drives performance and so on. And, there are two sort of broad ways to coach around that kind of report. One seems to be focused around the feedback profile, the behavior. And so even though we're not going to try to shift this person's mindset or maybe perspective, we're going to ask them to start doing things differently. Try taking these actions, try doing this with your team, behavioral coaching, pattern development, that kind of thing. And that works. It seems to be kind of easy. It seems to be easier for people in a way, and but it takes a longer time, because if you really want the kind of fundamental change you're talking about, Peter, that's coming into psychological, what I'm thinking about, how I view myself, those deeper patterns. So you'll get there in time, but it's basically you're asking the person to behave differently for long enough that they start to realize that not only works, but that they can identify with that. And anyway, the other way to coach with those tools is to start, more from the way they began, the clinical perspective of starting with self-description, the psychological patterns. And in that case, the challenge is getting people to open their minds and really connect with this information on a deeper, level than they probably thought this tool was all about. But if they do that, then you can create change and development in their actions and behavior and how they interact with immediately, right? Because now I can see anyway. So that's a much deeper kind of coaching, and leads to much faster, much broader, I think more successful development. But it takes takes a different approach, and I think it also specific to the individuals, right? We have to be open to that different way of working and willing to try it and willing to open our minds to a different perspective of how I do my job. So
actually what I think that without, in my own experience, without Tai Chi Chuan, practicing Tai Chi Chuan now for 20 years, I would have never been able to make the shift from KPMG, clear management, governing systems, into fully self-employed, and then go on, because the embodiment of the concept in the way of how you operate within your body and so on, it gives you a certain momentum, or an ability to keep the momentum in a constructive way, and to deal with all the defensive tendencies that we carry with us. And I think this is something that is just a complementary area that we can all think about. Maybe the world is not ready for it, but it's like everything. Once you tasted it and you see it's working, you don't go back to just insight and understanding something, but the insight is necessary. So it's not about that we can forget about any of these tools. It's just something that we say, if we want to build a stage development, we have to bring people into more an integral thinking, and that includes the body. So the embodiment of certain things stabilizes the journey in order to shift from a more defensive profile into a more constructive profile. And I think that will come soon, very soon.
Agreed. It's just as easy.
I don't think it can come soon enough, I think.
Yeah, right.
Pardon?
I said, I don't think it can come soon enough. I mean, it's to your point, there's a movement, it doesn't get spoken about, but in general, and what we're observing, the amount of zero-sum thinking, defensive thinking, I don't think it's, I think most folk are looking at it skeptically, but let's just hope that the movements that we talk about, can hold and can grow over time, and can address some of the sort of pain currently being caused.
I think we need to shoot from every angle, so we need everything, right? We need the business thinking here, we need the system thinking here, we need the behaviors, the psychological stuff. It's really integral. It becomes really, and we are never able to, even if we use KI that supports us in the Explorer area, we are not able, to approach a godlike state where we can, do everything at once. Okay, but this would be like being God, right? This is hopefully it will never be that way. But I think between God and where we are now, there's a lot of steps in between.
The current versus the ideal. At least we got a direction to start marching.
So one organization at a time. So
exactly.
Yes,
that's it. One step after the other. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Thank you guys for all of the input, Maria. Thank you so much for the cases. I really appreciate it. I mean, we've worked across several merger cases. I really like being able to look at different experiences, interacting with clients, pre-merger, post-merger. And I always find those to be some of the most fascinating as well, because it's just really interesting to see what happens when we take two organizations and put them together, hopefully in informed and guided ways, but sometimes not, and to see what happens anyway. But moreover, to use that information to help guide organizations in the right direction and make sure that as we do mergers, we do that in a way that leverages the strengths as much as we can draw from everyone and build something more positive for the broader business. Very good. Fantastic discussions. Thank you guys, everyone. We have about half an hour remaining, but I was thinking we should have taken a break. It's been what, 2.5. So shall we take a 10-minute break and then come back and do some closing thoughts, see if there are any questions from the audience, and wrap up then?
Yeah.
Yes.
Very good. Well, thank you, everyone, anyone who's tuning in, and we'll take a quick 10-minute break, and we'll be back to talk about mergers and acquisitions. Thank you so much. Thank you, Maria. All right, so that's our 10-minute break. So wanted to reconvene. Thank you guys for hanging in there, bringing back Maria and Peter Fenderfeen, and there's Mr. Christian. Fantastic. Thank you guys for joining. I hope you had a good break. So what a fascinating conversation. Thank you guys for all of the input. We have about 12, 13 minutes left, and I thought we might have a look at some questions. So thank you to those who wrote questions in. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to add those to the chat, and we'll try to hit them. Got a few questions, so let's try to touch on these quickly and in the time we have. So first question, I'll put it up here. So this says, what is the best time? Common question. What is the best time to do a due diligence before the merger or in the post-merger integration period? Any feedback on that from our experienced consultants?
It's a good question, really, because I think it should be. It could be before merger, but then we have to be together to as one company, not two, to sit and discuss the common direction, the common mission, etc. And usually they don't do it before real formal merger. So we
true.
start before, but we have to continue after. Yes, that's the earliest time.
For the transaction itself, it can make sense to include culture as one element of the scope of work for the due diligence.
Right.
It's up to the risk universe, let's say, in acquiring the target, right? But this is a completely different, let's say, view on the whole topic. Is there a deal breaker involved in this kind of culture?
Right.
When we look where we would like to, bring them into our strategy? It can make sense, right? It depends on scope of work, if it's a real risk element in the transaction itself, or as I said, on the buy side, it could be maybe there's so much potential that others don't see that we can, make a better bid. I don't know, but
culture is something very, very important, and also can be huge benefit for the company that buys the other company. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think it should be like the earliest time is just before, and then continue after. Yes.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Yeah, my standard answer is as soon as possible. I always think it's better to get this information earlier than later.
Right.
And I think there are some really interesting questions that we can ask pre-merger that are really helpful. One of them, like you mentioned, is there anything that just, is not going to work together? Is there a reason to think this whole thing may be at risk? Mm-hmm. The other one is I had not too long ago, a couple of organizations interested in these tools pre-merger because they wanted to look at whether the values of the two organizations were, consistent with one another. And with OCI Ideal, that's a wonderful use of that tool with M&As is, each organization pre-merger describing values in terms of, ideal culture, what we should do, what is best practice, and then look at those and recognize, in most cases, they're very, very similar. And so we do have, values that are consistent with one another. And I usually think in a lot of merger cases, that's the best place to start, because it helps them to recognize the goal of what we want to achieve and recognize that both organizations, basically have that same goal in mind. So that gives us that shared direction forward that's helpful in mergers. All right. That was question one. If anyone has anything else to add, then the next question is very tangible. So is there something like a 100-day plan post-merger? Input from your side?
Yes, if you want to bring the cultures really together, you need to have one, I would say. But if it should be, kept a little bit, the autonomy of the target in order to use their kind of specific, innovative, open, constructive culture in the segment that was acquired, maybe you don't want to, just leave them as they are for the first 100 days, right?
Exactly.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we usually recommend for culture development, some pretty specific things happen in the first. We usually talk about the first 90 days. We actually have that, you've probably seen it, the 90-day quick start materials that talk about first 90 days of culture, development. What should we be doing? So we do have that. And to be honest with you, there aren't a lot of ways, in my opinion, that the general recommendations for culture development in the first 90 or 100 days would really be particularly different for merger and acquisitions. I mean, mergers, you've got sort of two different layers, if you will, to address, but, still in those first 100 days, there are certain things we need to be doing, I would think. And I always think of those journeys, sort of laterally in terms of what do we need to be doing first, second, and third as we move forward in this. And the second is vertically, kind of in the organization. What are the roles of senior leaders, managers, HR, that sort of thing, and really everyone, right? If we're talking about this being a mindset shift that we're trying to communicate through the entire. So, what is the role of everyone, and how do we break that down into steps that we're implementing? So, anyway, we have lots of content on that, great best practices. So, happy to support. All right, next question. How can due diligence help leaders to position a merger as an opportunity for employees to learn, excel, and take their careers forward, rather than, I guess, the opposite, of seeing the merger as a risk, a threat,
I think usually they think about the threat.
Yes.
Employees are usually, uncertain of their position because some positions are doubled. Yes, so that is always a very difficult period for people. So really, to convince them that this is something positive for them, I think the first thing is to give them security, feeling of security, because otherwise they will never think about it positively.
Right. Very good. Agreed.
It's a little bit of, managing through change, different phases of change, where, you need to deal with all things and guide it into the constructive area, which will not happen right away.
Right.
Rational versus emotional acceptance, right?
You're right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think my line is a bit off, so I might, if you can hear me, I hope you can. But
yes.
I mean, the one thing that for me that's always resonated about mergers is how much excitement they can create, because all of a sudden you've got kind of people with a much bigger portfolio, a new group of customers, a new group of colleagues. If you've been doing the same stuff for a decade, like in some ways you almost crave for some change. And so the energy, but as Peter has said, I mean, I think that Maria, your point about security is spot on. I think the point about, move it towards the constructive styles, but everything in the constructive styles, setting new goals, new opportunities for excellence, new opportunities to support each other, a new team to build, to build affiliation. There's so much richness that mergers will present. So once people get past those fears, it really does enrich the work environment in very constructive and energizing ways.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Very good. Thank you. Then our next question. What if merging companies do not care about culture? What are the possible consequences? I think this came up a little earlier in our conversation today, but please go ahead.
Exactly, because we can have various situations. We can have situation that one company is caring about culture and then the other not at all. Yes. And we could also have situation when both are not interested, yes, in anything about culture. So there are probably different consequences of that. First case is quite difficult for the companies that is doing something about culture, yes, because that could be like a finish of all their efforts and everything. So that would be very bad. But I wonder what would happen if you have two companies. I don't deal with such companies, so I really don't know what's going on with them. But if they both are not interested at all. So the first thing which comes to my mind is what I shared before, the example of companies that after 3 years they were still talking we versus they. Yes. So there was no really one company. Mentally, they were two companies. Yes. And all the consequences that comes from that, I guess. Any thoughts about it?
No, I agree. It goes back to my conversation before. If we're not paying attention to this, then we end up, either both losing as organizations or, in quote unquote, the best case, one organization is winning at the loss of the other, if you will. And again, that's a lot of potential that we're leaving on the table. So
I mean, this is it's not wise to do it if culture has a major impact on the business success, and there's still the opportunity to influence it. Because if you do nothing, although I'm a fan of Lao Tzu, but
I can tell, yes.
you would agree here that if it has a major impact on the business and there is still time to influence it, it's better and wiser to do something about it.
Yeah, there you go. It's a very solid chain of logic.
You accept something, and you just forget about something that will definitely come back to you, right?
Right. Yeah, it's a matter of time. Exactly.
There's the famous quotation that I think is misattributed to Leon Trotsky that said that, you might not be interested in war, but war is interested in you. So it's saying, you might not be interested in culture, but culture is interested in you.
Yeah, this is a very good point.
There's also of course, the opportunity to say, if it hasn't a lot of impact and you can influence, maybe you should not do and just accept it as it is. Same is true if you have no way of influencing it at all, which is hard to imagine, but then it's also from a rational perspective, you rather do nothing.
Correct. But I like that argument, but I've never seen it go any other way. Culture has always been a direct driver of business performance in every organization I've seen, and culture has always been something that we can change. So
it goes a little bit in the direction of Chine, who said that you don't work on culture just for working on culture. It always needs to have an impact on something that is of strategic importance here, right? That is the kind of mission that you have, or the strategy,
right, the goal. Because again, the culture is the means. It's not the, it's the means by which we do what we do. It's not the goal, the target, the end game. So yeah, exactly.
And then you can also think about certain constellations where culture may not have the impact for certain purposes that are relevant, right? So it can, if it's a pure, short-term speculation on something where you see an immediate win, then you go for it. I know that's not popular here, but
no, I mean, no, I know what you mean. And that's, but the trap, I mean, at the end of the day, that regardless of what that KPI performance is, the culture affects, like, human well-being, right? So, you never really get away from that as long as that matters in terms of, the ability of people to think and use their skills and not
you should
be
tell
burned
this
out.
to your colleague at the X company.
Well, right. How we measure performance, how we view success in the organization is key. But anyway, for a variety of metrics, whether it's burnout or employee turnover or any of that stuff, creating a workplace where people feel motivated, engaged, safe, able to contribute bodes well for your business, at least a heck of a lot better than the opposite does. So, yeah, even though you can identify those deliverables, that anyway, culture is that is a price to pay in the end, one way or the other. So yes. All right, good discussion. Sorry, we're running low on time. Let me see what else we have here in terms of questions. Biggest barriers. What are the biggest barriers to successful merger of cultures? Got a famous quote on this one, but please go ahead.
Now, first barrier that comes to my mind are leaders. That's always their mindset is completely different, So that's right. A very difficult thing for sure.
Yes, agreed.
And deeply ingrained beliefs that contribute or that support aggressive, defensive behavioral patterns.
Yeah.
Which comes back to the leaders, of course, right? If they support us, then we have a problem.
Yeah, it's funny. We talk a lot in accreditations in various places around not just defensive behavior, but the ways in which, like, the differences between how passive versus aggressive patterns influence performance and so on. And one of the things that's really frustrating about aggressive behavior in patterns is how they are resistant to learning. They really do resist new information, resist different perspectives. That's sort of the inherent default. And I think that's why I connected so much with what you said about this, aggressive behavior specifically being a barrier in the early stages, because it just takes so much extra time and effort to get the message across to those organizations and leaders of what this really is, why this really matters, why it's really important, and why they really need to do something about it. And it's just such a, and I hate to say it, but those are also the organizations that will complain that it takes 3 or 4 years to shift the culture. Meantime, they're so resistant to being open to this kind of input that, anyway, they end up wasting a lot of their employees, their people's potential and time. Anyway, I agree. That's what's frustrating with those red styles. It's not that they won't move things forward. It takes so much time to get that alignment. And that's the thing. It's get that alignment within the organization to actually do it. So.
Especially when they are successful. In the car.
Right, there's a misattribution of success, right? So we're successful because of whatever.
I'm doing everything great. Why should I change anything?
Correct. Yeah. Well, and you may be doing great, and that's wonderful. But I hope leaders can see that their businesses and their people could always do a little more. It's not about. It's about the potential to do better. Is really what these these tools are for. It's not about helping in fixing problems. It's about, I think it's mainly about creating greatness, creating excellence. So
Yes, and sometimes success
things
comes
may be
from
great, but
completely
could be
different
better.
reasons.
Right. And sometimes, organizations have to come to a point where they realize that what we're doing right now will no longer work moving forward.
Exactly. What was
We
in the
have to
past
do
will
something
not
different.
work in the future anymore.
Yeah.
The problem is if people who are in these patterns, they don't see it because they are committed to being right, and they are committed to being right because they think they are for the right reasons committed to being right. You cannot, once they have identified and it's part of their identity,
it's very deep.
Things must happen that will not come from a report, right? So
Right.
We learn by catastrophes or whatever.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate how often that happens before we, are able to get involved, and how often, with client organizations, they really do get to that breaking point before they reach out and try to get help. So I always find that, that's sort of too bad. If organizations could reach out a little earlier, not get to quite that extreme point. And also in terms of development, it creates a better experience and a more positive learning journey. If we get to the point where we see that our business has a problem and this development is about fixing a problem, I mean, that works, but it's not particularly inspiring if that's fair. If rather we recognize we're doing great, but we could do better, or moving forward, in order to do great things 5 years from now, we need to do something different. And it's not that what we're doing right now is wrong, but it's about building excellence and greatness moving forward. Then, that's a different it may be very much the same report, the same profiles, the same steps in the journey, but the perspective of we're fixing a problem versus we're building excellence here is a very different one. Mindset, right?
Yeah.
Or you go to the horses course of our colleague.
Yes.
You can find out that the original belief that you have will not move the horse.
This is true. Yeah. Peter's talking about so we do
That's
leadership coaching with horses, and I'm doing one fairly soon in Istanbul. We're actually doing a project with the university in Istanbul on coaching leaders with horses. So, great stuff. Yeah. Well, getting people outside their comfort zone, trying these things in a different kind of setting, seeing how different approaches create different results. It's good. It's good exercises. All right. Let me see if we have another question. I think we do. Here's a good one. So, how can leaders address barriers to realizing synergies? For example, applying the skills from one entity to the portfolio of another. We touched briefly on this, I think, earlier as well. Please. Yeah, in a best case, that's exactly what I think a merger should be doing, is taking the strengths of both organizations and building upon them. I've done presentations, by the way, on mergers before. I had a really good, really great case a few years ago where we had just massive organizations that were merging, and we were able to get this data pre-merger and use it in a really very effective way. So there's a video on our website of me going through that process. But that process really does focus on this, at first focusing on strengths in these organizations, finding something that's a strength on either side, leveraging that together and directing that toward a common goal. Very, very good practices. All right, one last minute, one last question. How to merge two aggressive cultures from a distance?
That will be difficult because they will not want to really do anything about culture because they are aggressive, so they are right.
Right. Yeah. And you've got So you get that resistance to learning. You've got the resistance to other perspectives. And you also have that very strong, probably, identity in terms of, this is who we are. This is what we do, that task identity. And as we know from the tools, those aggressive patterns really prevent healthy effective interpersonal behavior. So, you know, you can really see and expect what's going to happen when these organizations come together, but your people in their minds are, you know, clearly belong to one side or the other. That's a perfect formula for the us versus them mentality. And, you know, a way in which you're going to have a culture where people are spending most of their time essentially working against one another within the broader business to the cost of the organization and really the people in it. So,
but you
yeah, that's a tough one.
You can observe the process without intervening and hoping that it gets so severe that at a certain point in time they become more open to shift that behavior.
Yeah, I've had that happen. Where cultures are getting increasingly defensive and performance is getting worse and worse. And the you know, it really is a matter of almost waiting until the organization realizes that, unfortunately, that's
too much young energy in here. So it will turn around at a certain point in time, right? It will turn around at a certain point in time. You have to be there when that point comes.
right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about development, and we can't make leaders or teams or organizations change. They need to recognize for themselves that, you know, that this is something they need and that they have to take those steps for themselves. So it's like any other coach or any other kind of support. So, you know, being able to give them good data on what's happening and how it's affecting them, and moving forward, what would be a healthier, more productive way of doing things, and guiding them in terms of the step-by-step. But right at the end of the day, like any development, we can't make it happen. So we need to be there so that when they realize we need to change, that they have an idea of who can help guide that effectively. So, and that's what we're all about. So. Well, thank you so much. I think that is our time. Thank you to everyone who has been tuning in. So thank you one more time, Christian Sellers, for your time today. Of course, Peter Fenderfeen, always wonderful to have you. Maria, thank you for being our star guest today and sharing several of your merger and acquisition cases. They're always fun for me to work on and experience, and great to share insights with all of you today. And I'm sure that this was a win-win, not just for us, but for anyone who is interested in these topics and tuned in to take the time. So thank you all. And I look forward to doing another roundtable on another topic again soon. So I hope everyone is able to join us in the future for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.